Fall 1997. I'm sitting on the subway with Kira. It's been 6 months since the strike, and we still fight about the betrayals, what might have been, the 52 demands, the not being able to care for each other while doing political work. The white woman on the subway next to us is speaking. Kira gestures for me to listen. Over the sound of rush hour traffic, I hear the familiar words: New School, Extreme Tactics, Identity Politics, Hunger Strike. I stop to listen.
Audre Lorde.
Presente.
Alice Walker.
Presente. Presente.
Today, they don't want us to draw the connections between an entrenched Eurocentrism at the GF, economic inequality, gender pay inequity.
Coming from this mobilization, what we were talking about was the intersections of class, of gender, of race. Now, this was an intersection that occurred not in theory. This was an intersection that occurs in reality that we were able to think about.
When we started off, we did not know, did not anticipate, and therefore could not believe that what we would actually end up with was an intersectional analysis that gave us a really deep understanding of how the institution functioned and how it relied on different kinds of exclusions and exploitations at different levels in order to really solidify itself.
Someone should say somewhere in this video that we're in this world-famous Marxist institution, okay? World-famous Marxist institution, which turns out to be this, white place with 2.5 tenured faculty of color.
Welcome to the forum, Living the Legacy, the State of Emergency at the New School continues. This is the second forum organized to examine the crisis in the university's management of diversity. In other words, to critically examine the existence of racism, sexism, classism, and heterosexism in the university.
We come together then in an institution whose identity was formed through the legacies of those who longed for home, those who, tired of exile, struggled for liberation and waged a sustained critique. We take this legacy of exile very seriously, and that is why we are committed to bringing this legacy into the 21st century. So first then, a basic acknowledgement. This university is in the throes of a profound crisis, one brought about by the huge gap between its stated commitment to diversity and its actual policies.
Perhaps many students of the graduate faculty may feel like I do that we are at educational risk. As an entering student of the Committee in Gender Studies and Feminist Theory at the graduate faculty, I was given no indication that because of the intellectual work that I intended to pursue, and that I was being told was possible to pursue at the GF, I would be placed at the edges of classroom discussions, as an afterthought in the minds of my professors, at the margins within this institution. Before many of the current generation of students of color decided to enroll at the GF, we were invited to a day-long series of activities during a Students of Color Day.
I was shown picture after picture of practically every person of color that attended LANG. Spanish-sounding names were thrown my way because I didn't have the privilege to study with.
We must be clear about our aims. We are not trying to destroy this institution. We will transform it. And make no mistake, our communities have been transformed through the very struggle. And that is already a profound victory.
What the students have done is integrally linked to one of the central tenets of feminism. They have taken the social facts of their existence, their experiences, and are developing a language and a praxis to make those experiences intelligible beyond mere survival. They struggle to make meaning of the existence in the academy. They have organized precisely at that point where theorists of social movements have problematized the moment of making the link between one's personal discontent and collective conscience and action. They have organized at the conjuncture of that old Marxist adage, class consciousness is knowing which side of the fence you're on. Class analysis means knowing who is there with you.
Someone who corrupted the youth, who electrified the students, who all this language. I think that someone who inspired. I think other faculty were jealous of the fact that people were moved by her work and inspired by her, and wanted to see that the power of this particular person, who not coincidentally was a lesbian, was from the West Indies, from the Caribbean, stopped. They wanted to see her stopped, her power stopped.
We have got to take principled positions in the academy. We have got to investigate the archaeologies of the racial regime of this academy, of the GF, of Parsons, of the divisions that reinforce a disciplinary and status divide of the new school. What kinds of fieldwork and ethnographies will we enact here as opposed to elsewhere? And as Stuart Hall has so eloquently asked, to what historical moment are we aligned?
They were really afraid of her, and they were afraid, they were afraid of what she represented to us, about what we would do to fight for the kind of knowledges she brings to be here.
I think that what they believe is that it's one thing to teach something. It's another thing to have that teaching move students in particular ways or interrogate the institution where one is.
We can't study what we want to study within the structures that be. So we have to make our own structures. And so we're going to create our own school within a school. And what else? We're exiles because we don't have a home in the new school. We don't have a home for people of color, so we're exiles.
The students and the faculty and staff that are involved in the mobilization for real diversity, democracy, and economic justice are reclaiming this vision, reclaiming the vision of the progressive and indeed radical and revolutionary educational model. Education as a means for liberation, education as the practice of freedom and liberation. So this is what we're doing here today. And I think we're getting ready to start, so I gotta go.
I guess the original university in exile was established in 1933 to distinguish European scholars persecuted by fascist and totalitarian regimes in their own homelands. Now, however, in 1997, we're faced with these very same structures of domination, these same structures of erasure and violence at this institution that was supposed to be a bastion for progressive thought.
There's such a clash between what you want to do and the people who are around you. And that would be fine if they get the fuck out of your way, you know? But some people, some faculty are just like roadblocks. That's all they want to do, is to either change your language so that you have to translate yourself and your ideas to their code, you know, to their master code, or you get the fuck out, you know? I mean, that's how it breaks down sometimes.
It's very dangerous because I think, you know, a lot of people put on a face or a mask, you know, that you don't see at first. You know, you see, oh, they're very friendly, they're very, you know, they're very supportive, they'll do anything, and then one thing leads to another and you realize there's something wrong in the picture.
Of our conditions of domination. There's not going to be one without the other. We're not going to be free until we are all free.
The link of the mobilization to the security guards was more to than just linking up the issue of institutional racism. It was a whole question of institutional integrity and institutional accountability.
What we saw was the tendency on the part of the school to tenure, the bulk of the people who were tenured and full-time were white and were also male. And it was in working with Adipolis's case that we came to understand that not only were they white and male, but that there was also an unequal payment structure. Because, as you know, the results of Adipolis's case was that the new school intentionally violated federal law and paid, in this case, Addie, much less than her male colleagues.
We really think that the new school's paying a lot more money for the security function, okay? But they admit that they were paying $11.20 an hour, $5.90 of it went to the men, $5.30 of that every hour worked went to the white subcontractor.
It reminds me, you know, a number of years ago when the clerical workers at Harvard University were organizing, they said that you can't eat prestige. You know, you can't eat prestige. And so this was the argument of the president. You ought to be able to eat prestige. There's some notion that you teach at the new school, this is an honor and in fact a privilege. So you need not be paid well, you need not get good benefits, etc.
They don't want any more unions in here. They don't want any more unionized employees in here. They're subcontracting out the dining service downstairs. These guys are making minimum wage. The whole thing's subcontracted out. It's the philosophy of keeping lean and mean, and especially for the new school, since you got a lot of the professors and the administrators at the top are making a lot of pretty competitive salaries in the $120,000 to $170,000 a year range, $200,000 a year range, in order to remain competitive in the market of academics.
To me, this is really falls in line with what happens when administrators are corporate execs, you know, when your whole board of trustees is filled with like businessmen, you know, and it's men, by the way. Let's put that out there, that it is businessmen who are running this show.
I don't know the white woman next to us on the train who was discussing these events, but I do recognize something about her. She's saying, I supported their demands, but...
We realized towards the end of the semester that working with the administration would just not work, and we needed to use other strategies to organize and to mobilize. So a group of 9 of us to begin with, and it ended up being 12 of us, embarked on a hunger strike to bring to the consciousness of the administration and other members of this institution the extremely violent and disgusting conditions under which we live in this university.
It was a relatively white group. And talking through that, you know, I think the answer that they arrived at, or the way that I read it, was people are suffering, and we have the privilege to make that suffering visible. So we're going to embody that suffering for people to see, because if we have the privilege that the faculty are looking at us and the administration are looking at us because we're white, then we need to be showing them back things are not all healthy. And once that started to happen and the faculty had to see the faces of these predominantly white but just people as opposed to concepts, the liberal guilt definitely kicked in.
This is a very critical moment in this year-and-a-half-long mobilization that we've been engaged in for diversity, democracy, and economic justice here at the New School. This is the 8th day of an ongoing hunger strike.
We put ourselves at risk. The hunger strikers put ourselves at risk because the security guards are at risk, because people of color in this institution are at risk, because women in this institution are at risk.
There is a revolving door policy when it comes to students and faculty of color, wherein once they get here, they find that there is no support structure for their work or their experience.
The knowledge that we bring to the institution is not permanently a part of how knowledge is imagined in this academy. And that's a fundamental problem, because faculty come and go, whereas the administration has absolutely no problem recruiting 60 or 65% of clerical workers as women of color. So it is continuing to pervade the notion that people of color are best suited for service, not for intellectual work, but for service.
This university is, by Jonathan Fanton, spending tremendous amounts of money on private security for the president, okay? At the same time, this university is unable to pay its normal security guards a decent, livable working wage.
It was appalling to me when we came into the picture, when the officers reached out to me, that their salaries were abysmally low. The average salary here for security officers is $5.50. Some men have been here as long as 13 years, 14 years, and etc. No health benefits whatsoever. No health benefits at all. And we thought that that was appalling. The men here at the school have to work 70 and 80 hours per week in order to take home $300 a week. And we think that's not acceptable to the union.
88% of the teaching at the new school is done by part-time faculty, most of whom have no health benefits, most of whom do administrative work in addition to teaching, and most of whom are not very well remunerated for these services. Yet the administration would like to see part-time teaching as an honorable thing, instead of looking at the exploitatively low wages that people receive. We will continue to insist on our analyses, our vision, and the collective demands we have put forth to solve this chronic crisis at the new school. Because I support this vision and want to sustain the work of different groups within this coalition, I want to make the intent of my own involvement crystal clear. I am not only for myself. I have requested, therefore, that the mobilization remove the demand for my retention from the set of collective demands that have been advanced. As of today, i.e. Monday, I join the hunger strikers in the ongoing struggle for justice at the New School for Social Research and in day 4 of the hunger strike.
The white woman continues her narration. She's saying, I supported their demands, but the environment became too polarized, and it was all about identity politics, and if you were white, then you just couldn't say anything. I tried to interrupt her. Excuse me? Excuse me, but excuse me? The loyalty in my voice rings to this day, the white girl not wanting to offend. I start to swallow my tongue, and that's when it hit me, and my head filled with voices. I turned to her and said loudly, what is your connection to the new school?
So I think when the mobilization decided to use this critique of whiteness, and to explicitly say we were battling something, combating something called white hegemony within the university, white people throughout the university heard that as their name, their individual name being called out. They didn't hear it in terms of certain patterns or certain ways in which you can trace the way power moves.
The way I think that white power excused itself in students and in faculty was that they didn't agree with the mobilization. They didn't agree with, they may have agreed with with our ends, but not with our tactics. And that really became the justification for not speaking. But it was such a pathetic excuse, because apart from whatever you thought about the mobilization, the fact remained that 99.5% of the faculty, tenured faculty at the GF, are white. And that's not us, and we didn't create that. And and before we came along, where was the mobilization at the GF among students and faculty, or white students and faculty, or anybody, saying, look, there's no women, there's no black women here. What's wrong with this? There's no Latino faculty here, and they could never own up to that. All they could ever say was, well, we disagree with you because of how you're doing this.
On the ground right now, they're laying to the ground to support hunger strikers who have put themselves literally in the way of death every single day, as the administration casually notes the demands and the expectations of students. How many people of Asian descent are at Parsons? How many people of Asian descent are at any one of the new school divisions? And that's all they have to look to. 2 professors of Asian descent to teach that. Okay? Okay, you say, well, white people can teach Asian courses, and you know what? Great. Where are the Asian courses? They don't exist. Okay? That's the new school. If you want diversity, if you want color, if you want interesting political dialogue and debate, then could you please go to a forum? You know what? The forums are free. The education is over $20,000. Can somebody explain the disparity in that thinking to me, please? Because there's a very, very large disparity.
What democracy is possible in an institution where the part-time faculty do the majority of the teaching but have no voice in governing? How's it possible? It's not. It's not possible. Yes, sir, it's not.
There's an altercation going on right now in the doorway right here because
I just want to let people know what happened up here. They're right to enter this building because they pay $18,000 in tuition, that this is absurd. They were getting all in the faces of the security guard, being sarcastic about how, it's not important that we should have women of color. It's okay that 95% of the tenured faculty here are white. 95% of the tenured faculty here are white. So, right here behind me, I have 2 racists who only think about themselves and their rights and their white privilege. And their white privilege, that's all they care about. This isn't exactly an expression of what we're talking about here. These are the people that we're exactly talking about. All they care about is themselves. They don't care about this mobilization. They can't even respect it enough to go around the corner. Like, what does it cost them to go around the corner? But they refuse to go around the corner because, of course, they're white males and they've been taught they can have whatever they want.
I just felt like there were white students who weren't holding themselves accountable and who felt that they could work in the group and not be held accountable, not only for their white skin privilege, but for anything.
White people needed to do a pretty basic reversal and just kind of say, people of color have been called to the service of white people for so many years. We're going to put ourselves at the service of people of color in a way. But I felt that that reversal, because of its uncritical starting point, like, really missed the way in which that new formulation also called people of color to service to legitimate white people's, like, good white personness.
The thing that I think that a lot of white students, especially the ones who were in positions of power, did not do was engage with other white students who weren't quote-unquote radical. And that kind of division of, I mean, that actually did fall mostly to people of color, and that outraged me, like, immensely.
You are not to blame for being born into the history that you were born into. But that the world isn't fair, and just because you aren't to blame for that doesn't mean you don't have responsibility for being accountable to that history.
And I don't believe in political struggle that is a bunch of people who believe that they're somehow completely individuals and have freedom of choice to do whatever they want, think whatever they want, and say whatever they want. I think that you have to have a community of people who care about each other and who are accountable to each other. Otherwise, you're just going to replicate the same things that exist in society in your group.
When white people need to talk to each other about whiteness, they can't really engage in that same kind of legitimation through association, or however you want to put it. I think it puts the focus squarely on institutionalized white supremacy and how do you relate to it.
Okay, this is what happened, because there's all these stories about what happened, and this is what happened. We're in the room that we were supposed to have the meeting in, waiting for the administration to come. They didn't come. They came a half hour late, and when they came, it was only Walter and Perino, and Fanton wasn't there. At which point, they informed us that Fanton would not be coming. So it all kind of happened very spontaneously and very slowly. Like, at first, we were around this podium thing where they were inside. And then as we kept arguing with them and they wanted to start to leave, we kind of started, I mean, we never talked about it. The people who were there just kind of started circling, like it all just happened together at once. We didn't want to hold him hostage. We just wanted Fanton to meet with us the way he had said he was going to meet with us. And then it's interesting, somebody called some white faculty from the GF to come to be liaisons between Fanton and us, because he would not talk to us. Like, he literally would not talk on the phone if it was one of us. So it's interesting, when white faculty get mobilized, is at that moment to somehow be the neutral, I don't know, sane ones, you know, because he's not going to talk to the mob.
If the meeting takes place, clearly whatever occurs won't be able to be implemented immediately.
Our primary concern is that we have been told point blank, okay, that Fanton does not see this meeting as a negotiation, but as another one of his ever infamous discussions.
Fanton, if you read his stuff or if you talk to him, always talks about discussion. Like, he likes discussion.
As a negotiating committee, we have no authority to tell this crowd to disperse, number one. And number two, they have a right to an assurance that an actual negotiation is taking place, and then they can make a judgment about what they're going to do.
I think he really does like discussion, because when there's discussion, he's safe, because discussion is just discussion. And we were very serious about the negotiation meetings being about